All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always ready. What are we looking at today?
Today, we're taking a close look at KULR Technology Group. Um, they're a company making waves in, get this, both the Bitcoin world and the battery tech scene.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, unexpected combo, right?
Definitely. That's quite a mix. So where do we even start with that?
Well, we've got three main sources for this deep dive. We've got press releases about KULR's pretty wild Bitcoin strategy and their new electrode breakthrough. Plus, we've got some stock information just to kind of put everything in context.
Sounds like it'll be interesting to see how those all connect.
Totally. So get ready for a deep dive into a company that's basically playing both sides of the coin, literally.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that really caught my eye right off the bat was how they're using this metric called Bitcoin yield to track their crypto strategy. It's not exactly a standard measure.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the deal. KULR is putting a ton of their cash, like up to 90% of it, into Bitcoin.
Wow, 90%. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge chunk of their capital. And they just bought another $8 million worth, which brings their total to a crazy $50 million.
50 million in Bitcoin. That's a serious commitment.
It is. And they're measuring it all with this Bitcoin yield thing, which is sitting at a wild 127%.
Okay, so 127%. But what does that even mean? Like, what are we actually talking about here?
Right, exactly. What in the world does that number even mean?
Well, it's actually kind of a clever approach when you think about it. What they're doing is looking at how much their Bitcoin holdings are growing compared to the number of company shares they have out there.
Okay, so their Bitcoin stash is basically increasing faster than the number of shares.
Exactly. And that could potentially be a good sign for investors, you know, if you're thinking long term.
So imagine you're holding a slice of KULR, right? And their Bitcoin is growing like crazy.
That could mean your little slice is becoming more valuable over time.
Yeah, theoretically.
Yeah.
But isn't putting so much into Bitcoin incredibly risky? I mean, what if the market crashes?
Oh, absolutely. That's the big gamble here. They're betting big on Bitcoin's long-term value, which, let's be honest, is inherently volatile. But it could be very lucrative, especially if they're right.
It makes you wonder, is this a truly calculated risk? Or are they just jumping on a trend, going all in without really thinking about it?
It's a good question.
But hold on, because there's more. KULR isn't just playing the Bitcoin game, right? They're also making waves in materials science with this new electrode they've developed.
Totally. They've partnered with the Scripps Research Institute to create an electrode made from pyrolytic carbon. And it seems to have a ton of advantages over the traditional materials.
It does. From what I've seen, it's cheaper to produce. It can be scaled up easily. It works in a bunch of different applications.
And it's even durable and recyclable. That's a pretty impressive combination.
Talk about checking all the boxes.
And you know where it gets really interesting is what this electrode could mean for synthetic organic electrochemistry.
Synthetic organic electrochemistry. I'm going to be honest, that sounds a little intimidating.
It might sound complicated, but think of it as the key ingredient for making medicines, polymers, all kinds of sustainable materials.
Oh, okay. So this isn't just some abstract science experiment. We're talking about things that could have a real impact on the world.
Right, exactly. And this new electrode has the potential to make those processes cheaper and more environmentally friendly, which is a huge deal.
That's huge. So they're even using this electrode for something called rapid alternating polarity Colby couplings.
They are. Rapid alternating polarity Colby couplings. It's a mouthful, I know.
Yeah. So break that down for us. What are those couplings and why should we care?
Well, think of these couplings like specialized tools, right? Tools that help chemists build really complex molecules. And these molecules are used to create all sorts of valuable chemicals that go into the things we use every day.
So this electrode isn't just about making lab experiments easier. It's about making things like medicines and sustainable materials more accessible and more affordable for everybody. So we've got KULR on the one hand making big bets in Bitcoin, and then on the other hand, they're developing this groundbreaking tech that could revolutionize multiple industries.
It's a pretty unique situation.
It really makes you wonder, are these two seemingly separate ventures actually connected in some way?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is KULR using its Bitcoin profits to fund this research? Or are they just doing two totally separate but really ambitious things at the same time?
I mean, it's pretty clear that they're pushing boundaries in both finance and technology. Could it be that their approach to Bitcoin is like a bigger piece of their strategy to be seen as a leader in innovation across the board?
It's possible. Maybe they're trying to create a self-sustaining ecosystem where the financial stuff fuels their scientific pursuits.
It's like they're saying, hey, We're not afraid to shake things up and challenge the status quo, whether it's in finance or technology.
That's a good way to put it.
But let's be real. There's a fine line between being a visionary and being reckless, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And that's what makes KULR such a fascinating case study. Are they going to revolutionize the way we think about business and tech, or are they going to crash and burn?
Only time will tell.
Right. We'll have to see.
But let's dig a little deeper into their Bitcoin strategy and see if we can find any clues about how they're using those funds.
I'm game. Let's see what we can uncover.
Maybe there's more to this story than we realize.
Yeah, there could be a lot more going on beneath the surface. So, digging into this a little bit, KULR announced this thing called the Bitcoin Treasury strategy back in December 2024.
Right.
And it was basically like, hey, we're going to take up to 90% of our extra cash and just put it right into Bitcoin.
And they followed through on that, right? They haven't just been talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
They've been putting their money where their mouth is, buying up millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. Seems like a pretty clear statement about their belief in the future of cryptocurrency.
Definitely. But you have to remember, Bitcoin is still a relatively new asset class, right?
Right. I mean, it's volatile, it's unpredictable.
Super unpredictable.
So this whole strategy comes with some inherent risks, no question.
Big risks.
Yeah.
But then again, if Bitcoin keeps going up in value,
Oh, yeah.
KULR could see some pretty massive returns on their investment.
Yeah.
And that 127% Bitcoin yield they keep talking about.
Right. That's not nothing. But it's important to remember that Bitcoin yield isn't like your typical, financial metric. It's not a dividend or a stock price or anything like that.
Right.
KULR is using it to track how their Bitcoin holdings are doing compared to their shares outstanding.
So it's basically saying, hey, our Bitcoin is growing way faster than we're putting out new shares.
Yeah.
Which is good news if you own a piece of KULR.
You got it. It suggests that their Bitcoin investment is outpacing any potential dilution of their shares.
Okay.
So from a purely investor standpoint, it's a potentially positive signal.
So it's less about how much their Bitcoin is actually worth and more about how fast those holdings are growing compared to the size of the company.
Exactly. It's definitely a unique way of measuring the success of their crypto strategy, and it reflects their commitment to this unconventional approach.
It's a bold move for sure. And I can see how it could be appealing to investors who are like really into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But it's still a gamble, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a gamble. KULR is basically making a bet on the future of Bitcoin, and it's a bet that not every company would be willing to make.
Right. Makes you wonder if anyone else will follow their lead.
Yeah, it could be a trendsetter.
We'll see. But let's shift gears for a sec and talk about their other big innovation, the pyrolytic carbon electrode.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about that.
So from what we've seen, this new electrode could make producing a whole bunch of things, medicines, sustainable materials, even everyday products, cheaper and more efficient.
For sure. And we can't forget about how durable and recyclable it is. Those factors are a big part of why it's so cost-effective and better for the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty amazing to think that one material could have such a big impact across so many industries.
It really speaks to how powerful scientific innovation can be when it comes to, tackling some of the biggest challenges we face, like climate change or making healthcare more affordable.
So on the one hand, you've got KULR going all in on Bitcoin, and then on the other, they're developing this game-changing technology that could completely revolutionize manufacturing and production.
It is quite the contrast.
It is. So are these two things actually connected?
That's what we're trying to figure out, right?
Yeah.
Is KULR using what they're making from Bitcoin to pay for all this research? Or are these just two separate but ambitious things they're doing at the same time?
I mean, it seems like they're really pushing the limits in finance and tech.
Yeah.
So could it be that their Bitcoin thing is just a part of this bigger plan to be a leader in innovation across the board, not just in one specific area?
It's interesting. Maybe they're trying to build a system where one thing feeds the other, like their success in finance fuels their scientific work.
Yeah, like a loop.
A feedback loop, exactly.
It's pretty unconventional.
Definitely unconventional. So is it going to pay off? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, only time will tell.
For sure. It'll be interesting to watch how it plays out.
Let's try to connect the dots a little more specifically now.
Okay.
We talked about their Bitcoin yield metric, but how does that actually translate into real support for their research and development efforts? Like, where's the money going?
That's where it gets kind of tricky. I mean, we don't have access to their detailed financial records.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say for sure how they're spending what they're making from Bitcoin.
But let's say they are using at least some of those gains to fund their other stuff.
Right. Then what?
then it's possible that QLR is creating this self-sustaining system where their Bitcoin investments are actually fueling their scientific breakthroughs, which would be pretty wild.
Yeah, it would. Imagine if their Bitcoin just keeps going up,
Yeah, right.
They'd have a ton of money they could put right back into research and development.
And then on the other side, their scientific stuff, like this
Yeah.
pyrolytic carbon electrode,
Hmm.
that could lead to new applications and markets, which could make them even more money.
Yeah, which they could then use to invest even more in Bitcoin.
Exactly. It's like a cycle.
It's a pretty fascinating concept, kind of blurring the lines between traditional business model.
Yeah, it's like a whole new approach.
But we can't forget about the risks.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Big risks.
I mean, the cryptocurrency market is so volatile, it's unpredictable.
Totally. If Bitcoin crashes,
It all fall apart.
and even if Bitcoin does well, there's no guarantee that their science projects will work out.
Hmm.
Research and development is always risky.
Very true.
So yeah, KULR's approach is really interesting.
It is, definitely.
But there are a lot of unknowns.
A lot of unknowns, a lot of potential pitfalls. It's a high-stakes game.
High stakes, but huge potential rewards. If they can pull this off, they
Yeah.
could totally change how companies approach things like technology, finance, innovation.
It'll be a whole new model.
But if they fail, it's a pretty big cautionary tale, about being too ambitious, about putting all your eggs in one basket,
Even if that basket is full of Bitcoin.
even if that basket is full of Bitcoin. Exactly. Okay, so we've spent this whole deep dive looking at KULR and their big moves in both Bitcoin and battery tech. They're playing in two totally different worlds, but I'm starting to feel like maybe those worlds are kind of, I don't know, colliding a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought for sure. On the one hand, you've got KULR embracing the volatility and the potential of cryptocurrency. But then on the other, they're knee-deep in cutting-edge science, trying to make things more sustainable. It's a strange mix.
It is. It's like they're hedging their bets on the future. Will it be decentralized finance or revolutionary materials that kind of drive things forward? Or maybe both.
And I think what's really fascinating is how they're kind of challenging the usual boundaries between like different business sectors. They're not just dipping their toes in, they're fully committed to both of these things.
Yeah, and they're not just along for the ride. They're trying to shape the future. So it really begs the question, is this something other companies should be doing? Will we start to see more companies trying to do both finance and science?
It's a good question. KULR is definitely doing something unique. I mean, will it work for other companies? Who knows? And we can't forget how risky it is, especially with all the ups and downs in cryptocurrency.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then there's the whole challenge of doing scientific research. Breakthroughs don't just happen overnight, right?
Definitely not. It takes time. And there's always the chance that things won't go as planned. QLR's success depends on them being able to handle the risks on both sides, the financial risks and the scientific ones.
It's a balancing act, for sure.
Big time.
So what's the takeaway here? What have we learned from all this?
Well, I think QLR is a super interesting example of a company that's pushing the limits and challenging how we think about things.
Challenging the status quo.
Yeah, exactly. They're making us rethink the connection between finance, tech, and sustainability. Are they separate, or are they all becoming more and more connected?
It's a question we'll have to keep thinking about as we see how things unfold for KULR. Will they end up as pioneers, leading the way into a whole new way of doing business? Or will they fall flat on their face?
We'll have to wait and see. But no matter what happens, I think their story has a lot to teach anyone who's interested in the future of innovation.
We've looked at their strategies, their tech, how those two things might be related. We've talked about the risks and their chances of success.
So now it's up to you to decide what you think. Is KULR a visionary leader, or are they taking a gamble that's going to backfire?
Are you inspired by what they're doing, or does it all make you a little nervous?
There's no right answer. The important thing is to keep paying attention, keep asking questions, and to keep exploring how the worlds of business and tech are changing.
That's it for our deep dive on KULR technology. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.